Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my 200 subscriber Q&A. For those of you who don't know, I recently hit 200 subscribers, so thank you to all of you for subscribing and checking out my videos and all that kind of thing. When I did my sort of thank you for the 200 subscriber video, I said I was doing a Q&A, so people left questions. First up, I've just got a couple of comments from people just saying congrats from Red 2020 and Bud Langley, so thank you to you guys for commenting and supporting the channel and all that kind of thing. I'm pretty much just going to go in order of least questions to most questions, because 3 people commented and left questions. So first up is Feeding the Machine Red 2605, said he saw I was doing a Q&A from Instagram because I posted it over there. If you guys don't know, I have an Instagram page for this channel where I post music-related stuff, so if you're interested in that, go check it out. What is your favorite Demon Hunter album? My favorite Demon Hunter album currently is Extremist. It has shifted a little bit over the last several years. I mean, since I first became a fan, it was like True Defiance, and then it was Storm the Gates of Hell, now it's Extremist. But I feel pretty confident in saying Extremist is my favorite. I would say like my top 3 is still those 3 albums that I just mentioned. What's your favorite Red album? It is Of Beauty and Rage, although I do kind of struggle to choose between that one and Innocence and Instinct because I think they're both incredibly good albums. But I think Of Beauty and Rage I just prefer just a tiny little bit. The next question is what are my top 10 favorite bands, which is of course a very difficult question. But I do have a rate music page, and on there I have like my all-time favorite bands, so I'm just going to read those off. And there's only 9 of them, but I'll probably mention some other ones as well. So for my all-time favorites, I have As I Lay Dying, August Burns Red, Batushka, Demon Hunter, Devin Townsend, Immortal, Iron Maiden, Red, and Sabaton. Of course, there's loads of other bands that I love as well. And then as far as like other favorites, I've got Abath, Amon Amarth, Anal Nathrak, Animals as Leaders, Behemoth, Born of Osiris, Breaking Benjamin, Psypcore, Icebreaker, Galactic Empire, Impending Doom, Insomnium, Meshuggah, Miseration, NF, Nia Obliviscaris, Powerwolf, Shield Magognar, Solution 45, Starset, Thy Art is Murder, Wolfheart, Wolves of the Gate, and Winter Sun. There's loads of other ones that I love too, like, you know, bands that I've been kind of getting into, like Queensryche and Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, that kind of thing, and some other bands that I've been getting into over the last little while as well that I love, but those are the ones that I have written there. Of course, there's loads of other ones that I love as well. Thoughts on Linkin Park? I tried to get into them quite a long time ago, like 5-ish years ago maybe, or around that sort of time. I tried to get into them. I couldn't really, I mean, I like some of their songs for sure. I think they're a good band, but I just never really dove into them that much, which I may try doing at some point. But yeah, never really got into them, but I do like some of their songs. And the final question he asked is, do I prefer rock or metal? I would say generally metal just because I listen to more of it, but I can enjoy rock just as much. I mentioned Red being one of my absolute favorite bands. I would say some of their albums are among my favorites of all time, up there with some of my favorite metal albums. It really doesn't matter to me whether a band is rock or metal. I just generally listen to more metal because there's more of it, I think, out there. There's more different styles, at least that I have heard. Next one is from Zach D Productions. He asked 14 questions, and he also said congrats, so thank you. So first one is, are there any bands I'm interested in diving into? There's loads of them. I put together a document a little while ago just for fun to see how many bands there were that I was interested in checking out or getting more into, at least for ones that I had already heard some of, and there were well over 100. To name a few off the top of my head, I guess, bands like Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Rush, Queensryche, Dream Theater, Meshuggah, maybe like Killswitch Engage, since I haven't really heard a whole lot of their stuff. Some like black metal bands like Gorgoroth and Emperor and Darkthrone that I've heard a little bit of, but I haven't heard very much. Death is another band. I've only heard one of their albums so far, and I would like to check out some more. Yeah, there's way more than that, but those are just the ones that immediately came to mind for me. Second question is my favorite thrash metal band. I don't really listen to thrash metal very much. It's one of those subgenres I haven't really dove into a whole lot. I mean, there's some bands I like. I mean, I'm not like hugely into them, but I'm like a fan of like Metallica, Megadeth, Creator, Venom, and Sodom. Those are the ones that kind of immediately come to mind for me. I like them, but I'm not super into them or anything. And out of those, I would probably say my favorite is Megadeth. So I guess there's that. Are you interested in looking more into All That Remains? Sort of. I mean, I did check out some of their. I like the band. I think they're good, and I've checked out some of their stuff. Like there was a while back, around a year ago, or maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'm not sure. When I checked out a little bit of The Fall of Ideals, I listened to the first few songs on there. I thought they were good. I didn't think they were anything mind-blowing or anything. I didn't really care much to listen to the rest of the album. But I may at some point check out more of their stuff, because they do seem like a good band, at least. Top 5 albums of all time. Much like the 10 favorite bands, that is a very tough thing for me to do. But off the top of my head, some of my favorites, Winter's Gate by Insomnium I typically consider my favorite, but I mean, Of Beauty and Rage by Red kind of gives that one a run for its money. I would consider those ones kind of neck and neck for my favorite, I guess. Also, Innocence and Instinct by Red, and Until We Have Faces, I would also consider 2 of my favorites as well. Empath by Devin Townsend, really several of his albums, like Empath, Sky Blue, Deconstruction, Ghost, several of his albums I absolutely love. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden, and Somewhere in Time as well, I would consider 2 of my favorites. The 2 Batushka albums, Liturgia and Panihida, I absolutely love. Immortals like Pure Holocaust and At the Heart of Winter, 2112 and Hemispheres by Rush I also love, the self-titled album by Black Sabbath, Screaming for Vengeance by Judas Priest, Extremist by Demon Hunter, like I said earlier, I would consider one of my all-time favorites. Basically, I have a lot of favorite albums. It's very tough for me to really choose a top 5, since there's so many albums I love for so many different reasons, but there's a few of them, I guess. 5th question, Instagram or Facebook? Typically I prefer Instagram. I don't really use Facebook that much anymore. I mean, I still use it, but I'm not on there very often. So I guess I would say Instagram. What are my favorite Rush songs? I've only heard Moving Pictures, Hemispheres, and 2112 so far, as far as full albums. As far as favorite songs from like 2112, I really like Lessons and Tears, as well as the title track. I would say those are my favorites from that album. And then Hemispheres, I really like the song. I believe it's called The Trees. Then also the closing track on the album, I can't remember the name of it, but it's an instrumental. And that may actually be my favorite Rush song. As far as Moving Pictures, I haven't really returned to that one very often, even though I do think it's a great album, so I guess I can't really comment on that one that much. Most anticipated album of the year. I'm really not sure. I mean, there's a lot that I'm looking forward to. The new August Burns Red, I'm looking forward to. The new Red album, even though I've been kind of iffy on the singles so far, I'm looking forward to, because they are one of my favorite bands. I'm really looking forward to the new Ne Oblivis Scars album as well, because they've only got 3 albums out right now, but all of them are absolutely fantastic and among the best albums that I've ever heard, so I'm really looking forward to their new album. And also Iron Maiden. I'm not sure if they're releasing an album this year or maybe next year, but whenever they do theirs, I'm looking forward to that. What do you think are metalhead essential bands? Now, this one's a little weird for me, because I personally don't believe there are any bands that every single metalhead needs to like, because people are just going to like or dislike whatever things. So, like, I would love it if every metalhead out there absolutely adored Iron Maiden and Black Sabbath, but not everybody will. So, I think there are bands that everybody should check out for sure, like some of those earlier bands. I think that the self-titled album by Black Sabbath is something that any metalhead should at least listen to, since it is commonly considered, you know, the first metal album. As far as essential bands, pretty much Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. As far as bands that I think any metalhead should listen to and check out, just to see kind of where the genre came from. Maybe even some like classic rock bands as well, like Led Zeppelin, because that heavily influenced the genre. What do you think are the 3 best years for music of the last decade? Kind of tough, because I think most years of the last decade had some really good stuff. I mean, there were some that were a little weaker. I think 2010 was, and maybe 2011, but not quite to the same extent, were kind of weakish. As far as the best, I would say 2019 was really good. There was a load of great stuff in 2019. I'd also say 2014 was really good, because I mean, that had some awesome albums from like Demon Hunter, Sabaton, Behemoth, Ne Oblivis Scars, many of those bands releasing what are, in my opinion, among their best albums, or sometimes their best album. There's more as well, but I'm not thinking of them at the moment. As far as number 3, I might say like 2015 or 2016, although it's kind of tough to say, or maybe 2012, I don't know. But I would say my top 2 for the decade are probably 2019 and 2014, maybe 2018 as well, I don't know. But those are my top two anyway. Favorite metal subgenre? I wouldn't really say I have one because there's so many that I love for so many different reasons, and my opinions shift around all the time. So like, for example, there might be a time where I say, oh, black metal is my favorite, but then like a week later I might say, oh, traditional metal or metalcore or, you know, progressive metal or any of those kinds of things. So I can't really say a number one, but I have many favorites, including those ones I already mentioned. I also really like power metal and melodic death metal and various other ones. I like to think I can enjoy just about any subgenre of metal, and I haven't been proven wrong on that so far. So yeah. Thoughts on people who only stick with a band's newer stuff? It depends, I think. If you are just now getting into a band, I think it's totally fine. Because that's personally how I always used to kind of handle things. I would check out like the newest one or two albums, and then if I really liked those, I would look into the rest. So that I think is understandable. I also think if you have listened to or checked out the band's older stuff, but you just simply like the new stuff better, I think that's okay. If you consider yourself a massive fan of this band, but you've only listened to like their most recent albums, then I think you should definitely look into checking out some of the older stuff. And I'm guilty of that as well. I mean, I consider myself, like, for example, I really like the band Architects, but I've only heard their most recent 3 albums. Although I do intend fully to check out the rest of their stuff because I really like those albums. If somebody is like only listens to their new stuff and they are not willing to look into the band's older stuff because they just don't think it can be good or something, I think that's a little bit of a problem. I don't think you should really limit yourself like that. But if you have checked out the old stuff and you just prefer the new stuff, or if you're just getting into a band or whatever, then I don't really see any problem with it. What are some things you're hoping to see for Breaking Benjamin's next album? I'm kind of hoping for a little bit more experimentation, kind of like what they did with Ember. I mean, Ember was still very much a typical Breaking Benjamin album in many ways, but one thing I really liked about it was that in some ways it felt kind of different. It seemed like they were trying a few new things, which I really liked. I'd kind of like them to do that a little bit more, just because I feel like with several of their albums like Phobia or even Dark Before Dawn, which was their kind of return album, they are kind of a formulaic band. You know, they know what they do well and they pretty much stick to it, which is fine. I would like to see some new stuff. Otherwise, I really don't have that many wishes for it. Least favorite metal subgenre. Again, kind of hard to say because, like I said, I think I can enjoy just about any subgenre of metal for the most part that I've heard. Even if I'm not super heavily into it, there's at least some of it that I think I can enjoy. But I would say, as far as ones that I don't really care much for, probably folk metal. I do like a handful of folk metal bands, but overall it's not one that I really care for. Not really into new metal that much. I mean, again, I think there's some of it that's good, and it is one that I might like to check out more of in the future, but as of right now, there's not much that I like. Maybe like grindcore or something. Some of these things, I like elements of them thrown into other genres, so like folk metal, for example. I don't mind if a band uses folk metal elements in their music, but just full-on folk metal, I don't really care for. Much the same thing with grindcore. If someone uses elements of that, like for example, the band Anal Nathrak, which is a band that I really like, they use elements of grindcore in their music, but they aren't like full-on grindcore. They kind of, you know, mix together, you know, grindcore, black metal, death metal, industrial metal, you know, all these different things, and they just kind of pick and choose from different subgenres, which I really like. So, yeah, I would say those 3 if I had to choose. And the final question for Zach D Productions is, what are some bands you lost interest or are losing interest in? First of all, I just want to clarify, just because I'm losing interest in a band doesn't mean I don't like them anymore. Because many of the bands that I have sort of lost interest in the past, I still do enjoy from time to time, or when I go back and listen to them again, I enjoy. Like, for example, 2 of the big ones that come to mind for me are Memphis Mayfire and For Today, which are 2 bands I got heavily into when I first got into metalcore. And I don't really listen to them much these days, but recently I did go back and listen to some of my old favorite albums by them. So for Memphis Mayfire, I listened to Unconditional, which has always been one of my favorites of theirs. And then for Today, I listened to Fight the Silence. And I still enjoyed those albums, you know, for the nostalgia of it, for sure, but also I just think they are actually pretty good albums. I would say those. I also would say Dimmu Borgir. I really got into them a couple of years ago. I wouldn't really say I have very many bands that are phased for me, but I think if there is, they are the closest thing to it, because I was really into them for a good 6 months or so, and then I was just like, they're all right. But I do like them, and still, I just am not as interested in them as I once was. So that's it for Zach D Productions. Now moving on to MJ Nation, who who left a whopping 40 questions. Thankfully, some of these it seems like I'll be able to get through very quickly, so hopefully this video isn't like 40 minutes long. First one, what bands got you into rock and metal? Red was the big one for me. They kind of opened my eyes to the whole rock sort of thing, so I gotta give them credit for that, and they're also just one of my favorites. Also, as far as rock goes, there's Red, Skillet, Spoken, a lot of Christian rock bands, because at the time that I got into it, all I really listened to was Christian music, so it was a lot of those bands. As far as metal, there was mostly metalcore, like As I Lay Dying, For Today, Memphis Mayfire, like I already said, Demon Hunter. Are there any bands that you're itching to check out, and if so, who? Kind of already been over this, but as far as bands that I'm really itching to check out more of, I guess, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, Rush. What is your favorite and least favorite school subject? I mean, I'm an art student currently in college, so there's that, but I also really like music classes. As far as like traditional classes like what I took in high school, I'm not really sure. I mean, I like history. I think that one's alright. As far as least favorite, probably like math or some sciences like chemistry, which I was terrible at. And I'm pretty decent at math. I just don't like it very much. Thoughts on pineapple on pizza? I'm personally not a huge fan of it. I mean, I guess it's not terrible. If somebody else likes it, that's totally fine with me. But for me, it just doesn't really do much. What metal subgenres do I want to look more into? Thrash metal, progressive metal. I would kind of like to look into some other ones that I really have had absolutely no exposure to, like avant-garde metal or neoclassical metal or stuff like that I'd kind of like to look into at some point. Industrial metal as well. What are my thoughts on 3 different bands? So I guess I'll just go through those. What are the thoughts on Pantera? I like them. I haven't heard any of their albums start to finish, although I have thought about checking them out, but I just ended up listening to some other stuff. They're not a band that I'm hugely interested in checking out, but they do seem good from what I've heard. Even their early stuff, like their first few albums, still seem pretty good from what I've heard, actually. But overall, I think they're very good. I just haven't looked into them very much. What are my thoughts on Van Halen? Kind of the same deal. Haven't heard very much of them, but I do really like what I have heard. And then finally, my thoughts on Aerosmith. They're the one that I've probably heard the least, but once again, I do like them. I would say out of the 3, they're the one I'm the least interested in. As far as the one I'm most interested in, I'm not really sure between Pantera and Van Halen. Right now, I'm probably leaning towards Van Halen, but I don't know. What are some of your most anticipated albums for the year? Once again, kind of been over this already, so I guess I'll just skip that one. Have you heard of bands from the funk rock or funk metal genre like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Primus, or Faith No More? I've heard of them. I haven't heard very much of their music. Funk rock I've been sort of interested in checking out, but I never really have. So maybe that'll be something I'll look into at some point. What are some of the most disappointing albums that have come out during your lifetime? Probably the most disappointing one for me was Broken by Memphis Mayfire, which came out in 2018. I mean, it's just kind of a typical hard rock album. They kind of followed that trend of going from metalcore to hard rock. It wasn't terrible. I mean, there was a few good songs on it, but I found it extremely disappointing and quite bland and boring and not that interesting. As far as other ones, Release the Panic by Red, which I still think is quite a good album actually, but at first that one did kind of disappoint me. I'd also kind of say Rise by Skillet, because at the time I was a huge fan of them, and when I heard that album I was kind of like, yeah, it's alright, and nowadays I kind of feel the same way. Otherwise, I can't really think of very much, so I guess I'll go with those. Do you plan to get any more CDs? Yes, absolutely, although it may be a little further into the future, just due to money and space and all that kind of thing, because while I'm here at home, I don't really have very much space for anything. My room has kind of become the storage room of the house. So I don't have a lot of space for that kind of thing, but I would definitely like to build up more of a collection in the future if I'm able to. Besides band shirts, do you have any other band merch? I have some like wristbands and stuff that I have. So like right now I'm wearing my Immortal one that I have. I also have some for August Burns Red, Blue Stolly, and Icebreaker. I used to have one that came with the Red Gone pre-order, but that one broke. But I still have the shirt, as you can see. And as far as anything else, I don't think so, aside from like CDs. I have my special book edition thingy for Demon Hunter's last 2 albums, War and Peace, which came with like some posters that I like to hang up. Other than that, I don't believe there's anything. However, I would like to get more like shirts. I've thought about maybe starting up one of those vests with the patches and everything. I'd like to do that at some point. What are some of your favorite Rush instrumentals? Like I said, the last song on Hemispheres, which again I can't really remember, is my favorite Rush song, so I guess I'll go with that. What are your thoughts on people who only listen to the singles or most popular songs from the artists they like? I think if you just like that band, I think it's totally fine. Or if you're just getting into them or whatever, I don't really think you can say that you're like a diehard fan of a band if you only listen to a handful of songs. Otherwise, if you're a more casual fan, I don't see any problem with it. Do I like sushi? I've never had it. I can't imagine that I would like it, but you never know. Do I like spaghetti? Absolutely. What do you think are the worst 3 movies of the MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe, for those of you who don't know? I'm not sure. I haven't seen a few of the more recent ones. I haven't seen Far From Home, Captain Marvel, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, so I can't really say those or anything. But out of the ones I have seen, I would say Thor: The Dark World is definitely my least favorite. I mean, it's just kind of a boring movie. The first Thor movie, not to the same extent, but I also didn't care too much for that one. I mean, The Incredible Hulk as well, which was like the second movie in the MCU, is alright, but it's not great. A bit of an unpopular opinion, although I haven't seen it in a while, but I didn't really care too much for the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Maybe I'll have to watch it again. I really liked the second one. And also, again, an unpopular opinion, didn't really care for Black Panther that much. I really like the character, and I think the idea of the character and, you know, Wakanda and that whole thing is super interesting. I just didn't think the movie was all that great. What are some of your favorite DC movies? I really like the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. I really like all 3 of those, although my favorite is probably The Dark Knight. I haven't really seen a whole lot of DC movies, actually. I mean, I've seen Man of Steel. I thought that was pretty good. I really like Shazam, but yeah, I guess I would go with those ones. Do you like any classic 80s action movies? I mean, when I think classic 80s action movies, I think of all the ones that I haven't seen, so like Die Hard, for example, I haven't seen, stuff like that, but I mean, I've seen like Star Wars, which I guess could count at least for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, since New Hope was released in the 70s. I would assume Indiana Jones would count, probably. I love Indiana Jones, so I guess there's that. Do I like comedy movies? Yeah, I do. Although I haven't seen very many. I don't really watch movies a whole lot these days, but there are a lot of comedy movies I really like. Do I have any band posters? Like I said, I have those 2 that came with the Demon Hunter thingy, the 2 alternate covers for War and Peace. But otherwise, I don't have any. I've thought about getting some, but I'm not really sure where I would put them. What's the most I've ever spent on a band shirt? Not totally sure. I would say maybe around $30, including like shipping and all that kind of thing. Quite a few of my shirts have actually been gifts, although I have bought probably, I would say, a third or a half of them. But as far as the most I've spent, probably 30-ish, something like that. I really can't remember. Are there any bands you personally can't stand? I wouldn't really say so. I mean, there's plenty of bands out there that I just don't really care for. As far as bands I can't stand, I can't really think of very much. I guess not really a band, but artists that I can't stand. Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, I do not like either of them at all. Although if I had to choose which one I like less, I would be Cardi B. Anytime I hear one of her songs, I just hate it. So I guess that. What are some of your favorite Breaking Benjamin songs? Dance with the Devil is definitely up there for me. Evil Angel as well. The title track from Dear Agony, Give Me a Sign, What Lies Beneath, Blood, Red Cold River, Natural Life from Saturate, which I think is a super underrated song. Defeated as well from Dark Before Dawn, I also think is a very underrated song. So I guess those ones. Do I have any metalhead friends outside of YouTube? Not really. I mean, I've met some people like at school that are also metalheads that I've talked to a little bit, but I haven't really gotten to know them or talked to them a whole lot. I mean, I guess they're acquaintances more than friends. What are your thoughts on grunge? I've never really gotten into it very much. I'm not sure if I ever will, but from what I've heard, it seems pretty decent. I just haven't heard very much of it. What are some of your favorite Queensryche songs? I love the song I Don't Believe in Love. That was kind of an ironic sentence. From The Verdict, I really like Man the Machine. That's probably my favorite song on that album. It's one of my favorite songs of theirs as well. As far as the Queensryche EP, I guess I'm just basically talking about my favorite songs from each thing I've heard. I really like the song Night Rider. That was probably my favorite song on that EP. And then from The Warning, I haven't really returned that much to The Warning, so I can't really remember for sure. I remember I liked Take Hold of the Flame, and Prophecy. I think No Sanctuary was another one as well. What do you think is worse, The Last Jedi or The Rise of Skywalker? First of all, I'm one of those people that really likes the sequel trilogy. I think all 3 movies are quite good, although I haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker since opening night, so I do have to watch that again sometime. now that it's out on digital and everything. I would say The Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite of the two, although I did still really enjoy it. The Last Jedi is actually one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I would put it at like my number 3 or number 4 spot, probably, if I were to rank them all. Many of the story decisions in The Rise of Skywalker I didn't care for, like bringing Palpatine back, for example. I was very against before the movie came out, but now that I've seen the movie, I thought it was alright. I still would prefer they didn't do that, or if they had to build it up more during the other two movies, so that it didn't just come out of left field like it did. Otherwise, I think they're both pretty good, but I would say out of the two, The Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite. Are you a fan of any side project bands? I haven't really looked into very many. I do think Demons and Wizards is a pretty decent band that's made up of a couple of members of some power metal bands. The only one I can remember is the vocalist of Blind Guardian, and that's kind of how I heard it. I mean, I heard a lot about the band, but I really got into them because I found out that the vocalist of Blind Guardian was in it, and I do like Blind Guardian. And then also Woven War, I do like as well. Otherwise, I can't really think of very many. Maybe there's some that I'm not aware are side project bands that I like. I don't know. Fan of any bands that are super groups? I don't really think so. The only one I can really think of is Beelzebubs, which is a band that's actually based on a comic strip. They're kind of like a melodic death metal, black metal sort of fusion sort of band. I don't believe that it's been confirmed who any of the band members are. Some people think some people from like Amon Amarth are in the band, or Insomnium. I know the vocalist from Insomnium is the vocalist because he has a very recognizable voice. So I would say them. What are some of your favorite Trivium songs? I'm not really sure since I don't really listen to Trivium a whole lot, but I do really like the title track from The Sin and the Sentence. And I also really like Beyond Oblivion as well from that same album, but I would say the Sin and the Sentence is my favorite song of theirs that I've heard. And I do actually really like the new single they released, Catastrophist, I think it was called. What are your thoughts on the band Shinedown? I haven't really listened to them. I've tried them out once or twice, like way back, but I never got into them. Do I plan to check out another Fear Factory album soon? For those of you who don't know, I think around January sometime I listened to the album Demanufacture. I do definitely intend to listen to more Fear Factory. I don't know how much, but I would like to listen to at least a few more albums. What do I think makes an album review good or bad? Being knowledgeable is a good thing to have. Not necessarily like knowing everything about a particular band, but having at least some basic knowledge is good. Having some sort of structure to it, I think, is good. If you just kind of ramble on about it, I think that can kind of make it a little bit worse. I think just general quality of it, if it looks like you actually put a decent amount of effort into it, then I think that helps. Do I like sausage? Yes, I do like sausage. What's your favorite place to get pizza? Probably Pizza Hut, I would say, is my favorite. I do really like Pizza Hut. Is Meat Lover's Pizza one of your favorite pizzas? Yes and no. It used to be my number one. I used to love Meat Lover's Pizza, but nowadays I just feel like it's a little too much for me, which is something that I never really thought I would say. Just having like 5 different kinds of meat on a pizza seems like a little bit overkill to me at this point, but I do still like it, so yeah. Who do you think is the best actor that's played Spider-Man? That's kind of a tough one for me because, I mean, I grew up on Tobey Maguire. I loved those 3 Spider-Man movies, and I still do. I think Andrew Garfield was quite good as well, although I don't like him as much. And Tom Holland, I think, like I said, I haven't seen Far From Home, but I think from what I have seen, he was really good, and I really like him. So I would say probably either Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland. It really depends. And the last question, what movies are you most excited for in the next or new phase of the MCU? I can't really remember very many of them. I'm looking forward to the Doctor Strange movie because that was one that I actually was really surprised by. The first one, I really like. I'm looking forward to the new Thor movie as well. I think it's called Love and Thunder or something. Even though I wasn't a huge fan of the first 2 Thor movies, I loved the Thor Ragnarok. So I'm looking forward to that one. Of course, I'm looking forward to the 3rd Spider-Man movie, which I assume is going to be happening. Which, again, I haven't seen Far From Home still, but I'm always excited for more Spider-Man. I think there's the Eternals as well, I believe, is having a movie or something like that, which I'm looking forward to. I don't know anything about it at all. I don't know anything about those characters, but from what I have heard, it seems pretty cool. Looking forward to Blade, but I'm also looking forward to, like, the Moon Knight show. I think, I don't really know a whole lot about the character, but from what I do know, and, like, I played some Marvel video games, and he's appeared in some of those, so I think he's a cool character. I'm looking forward to that. So that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys once again for leaving questions and all of that, and thank you for getting this channel up to 200 subscribers. So that is pretty much it for this video, so I will see you guys next time.